Hello everyone. I'm going to talk to you guys about the rhythm assignment and show you some tricks on how to do the rhythm project in Photoshop. So the assignment is for you to create 4 different designs based off of the idea of a lazy river, an idling Harley Davidson motorcycle, a seismic event, which think of it as like a giant boom, earthquake, volcanoes, explosions, and slow dancing. So the idea of rhythm, right? We talk about things that could be soft and gentle, what we call legato. We talk about things that could be wild and random and chaotic, which we call staccato. And we can go kind of across the spectrum of those. So things that are gentle all the way to things that are wild and crazy. Your assignment is to try capturing the feel of these things. So you're not going to draw an idling Harley. We don't want to see a motorcycle. We don't want to see an engine, but we want to see the feeling of an idling Harley, right? So think about kind of mechanical vibrations, right? Think chainsaws or something where you hold it and it's almost like your hand starts shaking from the buzz, right? How do you capture the essence of that in more of an abstract way? Lazy River is going to be soft and gentle and peaceful, something where you could just sort of float along and be relaxed, right? That's going to look very different. A seismic event, think end of the world, giant explosions, painful things, right? So that will look very different than a lazy river, right? So, how do you capture that? The other old video that we have on the class site will talk about using the shape tools and some ways you can play with shapes and building things up. I'm going to show you guys some ways of going about it with the paintbrush. Now, the paintbrush, I know I've gone over this before, but the paintbrush has the ability to play with the size, right? And we can make things thick and thin. We can play with the hardness of something. So let's play with this. I'll create a new layer so I'm not working on the background layer. Um, right, I have well, low flow, but high flow, right? This is a hard edge. If I go to a hardness of 0, I get a soft and fuzzy edge, right? So those are starting to look a little bit different. I also have a bunch of pre-made brushes that we can play with as starting points. Some of these might be very cool to try out. Um, so I have a nice sort of rough edge kind of piece. To make things fat or thinner or bigger, we can play with the size. We also have quick keys, which are the brackets on your keyboard. They're the ones next to the letter P, so we can go a small mark or we can go a bigger one, right, and create different marks that way. That flow back up to 100. So we have the ability to make some interesting marks, right? With this assignment, we have the ability to play with color. So you're not tied to just black and white. And so you can pick color over here. We have these little color pickers, which will give you a nice big color picker. We have the ability to go on the left side of this big box will be grayscale. All the way to the right will be full color. Down at the bottom will be dark. All the way up to the top will be nice and light. And then we have a rainbow that we can use that we can slide along here. Between these two adjusters, we can get 16.7 million colors, which is probably enough for what you're going to need to do. You also have the ability to play with the color tab over here, which is basically the exact same thing. There are swatches that you can use that have things that are pre-made, and we have a number of these that you can get and play with. The little more icon, the little hamburger menu always says, hey, there's more stuff, and there's some other swatches you can load and use. And all these are is just sort of a pre-made one, so you can use that and then start playing and still pick from there. That should be enough for you to get started. Create a new layer and play with maybe a low opacity. So with this, I can start building up maybe a pattern, right? This assignment is all about rhythm, which is going to be some sort of repetition, right? You're going to have some sort of flow. Think of it that way. How do you create a flow? Um, with a low opacity, I can actually start building up a flow and overlapping things and start getting these cool stripes, maybe. There's nothing saying it has to be nice and perfect. That starts working. Maybe I want to layer over different colors, right? And what are some things that feel lazy? To me, something lazy is going to be more of a soft and gentle. You don't want wild and crazy. A lot of people think since we're doing lazy river, you want kind of blues because it feels like water. Um, yeah, so this actually works pretty well to start building up something. I don't know how lazy that's feeling just yet, but it's got that abstract kind of calm feel to it. Um, Brushes work. You can also maybe work on another layer, and I'm going to do some that are sort of squiggly. Can't really see them yet, but you know what? Actually, I'm going to go even more intense so you can see them. So I've got some very opaque things. You can see how they're over on another layer, so they're stacked up on top of each other. But we can play with the opacity over here at the top of our layer stack. If you lower the opacity, it makes it so it becomes more translucent. Again, with opacity, if you're at 100%, it's fully opaque. If you go all the way down to 0, it's invisible. So we have the ability to play with layering. We also have the ability right here where it says normal. We have these things called blend modes. And with blend modes, when you hover over it, they're kind of like algorithms. It uses the math between the colors and it starts playing with how these things start interacting with each other. And you're going to have some that are darker, you're going to have some that are lighter, you have some that start blending in interesting ways. Some of these are looking a lot more wild and crazy than a lazy river. That one's looking like a painful ride down the river, right? So that one might work for one of the other more staccato assignments. So you can play with these things and get some things interesting happening. And I'm just going to randomly pick something just to say, hey, we got something. All right, so we also have this wonderful things called filters. And I'm going to pick on this layer. And filters are another way of using the math to modify your marks. And there are a ton of these, and you can easily spend days and days just sort of exploring. And it's actually a lot of fun, honestly. Um, what these do are a lot of things. And what I want to encourage you guys to do is just start exploring. So we have things like blurs. So I always like good old Gaussian blur, and all that does is it blurs, right? And so you can blur something, and then it just the colors start blending together. That could be very cool. And however far you want to blur. I'm gonna turn that other one off for now. Um, there are lots of other interesting ones. We have these blur galleries. We can do some cool distorts. Some of these are actually very fun. How about ripple? And so with the ripple, we can just sort of start seeing that when I hit OK, it just ripples it, makes it look like it's kind of like water. It's not really calm yet, but it's starting to get there. Right, we're getting kind of the essence of something. We can play with lots of these and just sort of stack them up and explore. I want to encourage you guys to try a bunch of these. So we have the filters. We also have a filter gallery, which has a whole bunch of other filters. Some of the same options in the same menus as the regular filters. I don't know why some are in here and some are not, but some of these are pretty cool. So you can add some textures or turn it into stained glass. Or some of the brush strokes and artistic ones are pretty cool. Um, Start getting something. I don't know if that's really a lazy river, but if you start looking at the undulations and the repetitions, that might start feeling like the idling Harley, right? So there's um, some vibrations there, right? The idea that you're stacking things up and just sort of vibrations upon vibrations. That's starting to feel like I could touch that. My handle starts shaking, right? Maybe the color is not quite right. So the final thing I want to show you guys on top of all the other stuff to play with this assignment are adjustment layers. So adjustment layers are another way of playing with the math. And on this layer, the bottom of your layer stack, we have the little circle that's half black and half white, sort of tipped over. If you click that, we have a bunch of things we can do to adjust the layer below. I really like hue and saturation for recoloring. So we have the lights, the darks, and the color. Very similar to the color picker, only now they're just sliders. So we can actually use this to adjust our colors. Maybe I want to go with something more in the orange starts looking like Harley colors, right? Um, or maybe I want to go sort of in the reds because reds are kind of give you that feeling of danger, right? Um, so that's starting to feel like it's pretty intense. Right? And lighter, darker, I don't know, right? But I can play with that. The cool thing with this is it is an adjustment layer. It's non-destructive is what we call it. So I can click turn it off. And so it's not actually doing anything to those pixels below. It's just this extra sort of mathematical equation on top. I can always double click on this and go back and adjust and say, you know what, I really wanted the colors to be more like this, right? Um, on top of that, since it's a separate element, I can play with my blend modes, right? So I can start playing with how the colors are layering or how that effect is layering with the pixels below. That's starting to look a little rough, right? That one might be more of a seismic event. That one's starting to look a little painful, like flying shards of glass and blood, right? Um, I don't know. All of these are kind of interesting, right? And that's the fun of this assignment is to explore and see what kind of cool effects you can create. This is more of an abstract, emotional thing. You're going more for the feeling of something, the essence of something. So I'm not thinking this is an idling or a lazy river anymore. This has kind of become an idling Harley. So I want to call it that. So I didn't worry, as you noticed, about being messy and around the edges. What I want to do instead, I'm kind of curious what happens when that layers on top. Um, I don't know, that adds some intensity. Okay. Um, I can take whatever layers I've got and I can pick all the layers. Holding down the control key, I can pick the layers, go down to the group, which is this little folder, and I now have a group so they're all sort of joined together. I can use the marquee tool, and I'm going to draw a box around what I want to see. And then I'm going to click this layer mask. And the layer mask is this little box with a circle in the middle down at the bottom of my layers. And now it's sort of like I got a window that I'm looking in. And with this, I can click and move the box around. Or I'm sorry, moving the layer inside. Um, Come on, it's grabbing the other one because my auto select is an auto select layer off. So I can now move my box or my artwork within the window. I can free transform if I want to free transform things to really just sort of build up that pattern or composition. If I want on the layer group itself, I can free transform, and maybe I do that just to sort of clean up the edges so it fits the edges of the box. And you can put these in any order. Most students try to do it in order. So the first one would be the lazy river, and honestly, this one would then want to be over here for the idling Harley. Um, so I now have an idling Harley. And so you go along and fill these in. And my one final bit of advice for you on this is to don't necessarily set out to make the thing, right? Don't say, I'm going to make the river. Um, just start playing with the brushes. See what kind of marks you can make. Play with the filters. See what they do. Try things. Build a couple layers. Overlay them. Start playing with your blending. See what kind of cool things you can make happen. And as you're going, you're going to find that you'll see it and say, you know what, that one feels like the river, or that one feels like slow dancing, right? Um, so explore first, and as you go, you'll sort of discover which ones these are. Some of you will find that you're very definitely more of a legato person, and your artwork will be very peaceful and gentle. So you'll have to force yourself to get angry a little bit and to get the Harley and the seismic event. Force yourself to get some things that are really dark and rough and just painful looking. Some of you guys will find that you're very chaotic and you're doing things that are very wild and crazy. So then you're going to have to try finding that balance and force yourself to do something very mellow and peaceful. Try capturing the gentle side. It's the great thing about this assignment is you kind of have to do both. One thing that really helps is music, honestly. And it's fitting. It's the rhythm assignment. You're trying to capture rhythm and flow. So if you're trying to do the idling Harley or you're trying to do the seismic event, put on some loud, wild, crazy music. Put on something that makes you bounce around and get angry. Or the other way, put on some very peaceful, mellow stuff and find your peaceful, lazy river, right? What you want to listen to as you're at the beach, just sort of floating along on an inner tube. The slow dancing one is always the wild card. In theory, that one should be a legato, peaceful kind of feel, and yeah, something gentle, right? The lights are down, it's romantic, it's just kind of comfortable. Um, or you might be the other way, where you're awkward and just bizarre. You step on the other person's toes, and it's just kind of a painful, anxiety-ridden adventure. So, some people illustrate the slow dancing that way, however you interpret it. And when you're done, hopefully, someone who doesn't know which one's which can look at it and say, "Oh yeah, that's definitely the peaceful one, and that one's definitely the wild and crazy one." That's kind of how you can judge success with this assignment. Um, Again, composition matters. Looking at things you've already learned, right? Focal points, if you want focal points, emphasizing certain elements within it, symmetry and asymmetry, all of that stuff. Radial actually probably works really good for slow dancing. So just for kicks, I'm going to make a copy because I kind of like the colors. Ooh, that's pretty cool. That's just one layer on top of another, the same thing. That one's kind of neat looking too. But I'm going to go down here, move this one down, and in here, there's a great filter for distort. And I'm going to twirl. Take that one and I'm just going to twirl it and see what kind of cool, right? That one's starting to look a little bit more slow dancey. Maybe. I don't know for sure. Maybe the colors need to change. Um, So I want something. I don't know. I don't know what I want, honestly. But that's the fun of it. You can just start playing and adjusting and tweaking and exploring. And when you're done, hopefully you have four really cool abstract pieces that capture the essence of what you're trying to illustrate. And again, as always, if you have questions, please ask. If you want more help on creating a specific effect, please ask. Mostly put on some music, get lost, and have fun creating cool, neat patterns. Right. Thank you very much.